it was being able to go to school every day, and even if I had an exam or a test and I was really nervous about something, it didn't feel like I was walking into a building where I had all this anxiety.
I'm Glenn Herbert, and I'm an editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private schools to gain insights into their programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administrators. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
It's a good question. I think it was being able to go to school every day, and even if I had an exam or a test and I was really nervous about something, it didn't feel like I was walking into a building where I had all this anxiety. It was, from the moment you walked in the school, you saw Carol, the receptionist, who said hello to you, and your day was just automatically brighter. And you walked through the hallways and you said hi to friends and teachers, and you weren't just walking into a school, you were really walking into a community, a place where that kind of felt like a second home, where you did feel confident and where you felt comfortable being, so much that I'd always want to go to school early and I would be staying late. And I think that's really unique to say about a school, especially in high school, when that's a difficult time in your life. And a lot of students I've heard, look back on high school and they're like, oh, I'm glad it's over. I didn't really have that same experience. I really enjoyed every day that I spent there, and that's something I really appreciate for sure. I really think it's Sacred Heart's tradition and all of the extra things outside of academics. Um, in terms of academics, the teachers, sorry, are extremely supportive, and I was able to take classes that perhaps I wouldn't have had the courage to take had I not known that I would have that support. So I think that's really unique. But in terms of tradition, it's all those extra things that you got being a student at Sacred Heart that was outside of the classroom. It was the school is older than Canada, so you had all this history. You were living amongst so many neat stories about alumni and experiences that you got to share with a bigger group of people than who was with you at the time at the school. There's lots of graduation traditions, like something we call Last Will or the headmistress's tea. There's something where there's a chain of paper chain of every name of a Sacred Heart graduate. And each year at the end of the year at our prize day ceremony, the grade 12s wear it on their shoulder and they pass it off to the grade 11s, who then take their place on the stage as the new graduating class. And I think it's all those little aspects that really make your experience at Sacred Heart unique and different, because it's something that's not offered otherwise. And I think something else is our international connections to the rest of the world. Sacred Heart has over 100 schools across the globe, and you actually have an opportunity as a Sacred Heart student to exchange to any of those schools without any extra cost besides your flights getting there. So I got to go to Spain in grade 11 for a month and attend a Sacred Heart school there. And I think that's really unique. That's not something that's offered everywhere. Oh, that was a hard question. Three words. I would say caring, confident, and strong. So I think the experience of Sacred Heart as a school is a very caring place. It's very caring people, a very caring environment. I think that something that every student gets out of being at Sacred Heart is learning to be confident. I think that has something to do with the single sex education that they offer, where students are able to challenge themselves. They're able to push themselves beyond what their normal boundaries might be because they do really feel supported in their school environment. So I think Sacred Heart is teaches confidence and therefore has to be confident to do that. And in terms of strength, I think the school has withstood many, many years, gone through many different time periods, and has taught many different generations of students. And that takes adaptability, that takes strength. And I also think they teach their students how to be strong, how to be leaders, how to be strong-willed, how to be, secure in who they are as people. And I think that's especially important at a girls' school, to teach those attributes, to have the students when they graduate feel strong and feel capable in the world that they're being released into. I think that's really important. I would say ambitious. Um, every student that I ever interacted with was always involved in some way or another outside of academics. And I think that's because there were so many opportunities to get involved that students kind of just ended up doing that. But I know within our class, it definitely was, everyone wanted to be the first person to like talk or put up your hand or be involved in something. And it wasn't, I don't say it in like a way that Sacred Heart was overly competitive. It really wasn't, because everyone kind of had a unique ambition that they were going after, but everyone kind of had something that they were looking forward to doing in the future or during their time at Sacred Heart. The greatest value I saw was in the diversity in a way where each student was different. Um, Sacred Heart wasn't a one size fits all kind of school. They saw the value in students being different. That's why they offered, different levels of courses, and you could, take advanced chem, but you didn't have to take advanced English. They had those options, they had that flexibility within the students, and they really had opportunities for students who are interested in arts, who are interested in music, sports, science, the humanities, anything. Even though it was a really small school, they really tried to make sure that those opportunities were there, because I think they really did value difference and unique personalities. And it wasn't just kind of what we talked about before, it wasn't just one student type there. There was really a lot of different people. Even if you look at my graduating class, we were all very different. And that was something I think that, I don't know, is advertised or not, but I really valued being there, that was something that Sacred Heart emphasized and allowed to happen. Because sometimes at small schools, you attract a certain type of person. But I really felt Sacred Heart socioeconomically as well, it was very diverse, and that allowed students to learn about different perspectives and unique people and the importance of that. So I think that was something that was seen on the ground being a student. I think they would be surprised by what happens within the walls of Sacred Heart. I think with Halifax being such an old city, and there's not being very many private schools, every private school kind of has a reputation uh, about, what they are, what their students are like, what they have to offer. And Sacred Heart is the only single sex school in Halifax, I believe. And from the outside, the building is very beautiful and looks like a castle and glorious in that way. And so I think beyond that, people would be very surprised to see how down to earth the school is, and how important they really take, current events and students being really aware of what's going on and being participating in what's going on. They're not kind of living in this bubble of a private school. They really value those real world experiences, and the types of things that in the ways that they teach. So I think that's something, as well as being a single sex school. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, girls are never going to know how to interact with boys if they go to university. I got that a lot from, family, friends, or whatever. My parents got that, how are they going to learn to interact with boys if they're, locked in a school with just girls? And it really isn't that way, because we do have a boys' school that is quite literally attached to the girls' school. And in elementary school, it's co-ed, and then it splits in grade 7. So when I started in grade 10, I didn't know any of the guys, but all of the social aspects of the school are really interconnected. The student councils, they work together, all the school events, the dances, the winter carnivals, all that stuff is with the boys' school as well. So you do completely interact with boys, but I think the really neat thing about Sacred Heart is you have that time in your classroom just with the girls, and that's where you gain that confidence. So then when you do have to work with the boys to plan an event or work with them on student council, it's really quite easy because you're already so confident and secure in yourself. So from the outside, I think people just see, a girls' school and they're isolated. And I really don't think that that's the case once you get beyond it. I give Sacred Heart a lot of credit for who I am today. I was always a very shy kid, and through my different experiences at different schools, I've definitely grown. But entering into school in grade 10 where everyone knew each other already and I was the new kid once again, I was really unsure, I think, at the beginning, kind of how that was going to go. And I wasn't necessarily the first person to always, go for a leadership role or, take charge in that way. And then by the end of my 3 years at Sacred Heart, I was head girl. And I would have never, ever dreamed of that in a million years. And even being on student council in grade 11, I never thought of that until it was actually someone the year ahead of me was like, well, why don't you run? And I kind of thought, well, I would have, I don't know, like that's just not something I thought I would ever do. And sometimes it takes a community of support to just push you to say, well, why not? And I think Sacred Heart did that for me a lot. The school kind of said, why not? In so many words or not, why not take that risk? Why not challenge yourself to do something else? And I really did gain a lot of confidence from being at the school. I gained a lot of experience working with administrators and teachers and just learning how to work with adults and communicate with adults. They weren't something that was hidden away. As a grade 11 student, as the treasurer for the student council, I was working with the headmistress. I was working with her team. We had meetings with them when a school decision had to happen. They brought in the student council. And all of those little things really made me into a person who was confident, who was willing to go for a leadership role, who felt that I could, that it was important that I did, and that it was something to be valued, especially in our world today. There's so many mixed messages of stuff that's going on. And I think, especially for girls, it's really important to encourage them to take on those leadership roles and push themselves. And in university, I definitely got extremely involved and took on a lot of leadership roles. I was very confident and secure in who I was. And I think that really came from Sacred Heart giving you a really safe space to figure that out, so that you could really figure out who you were and at the end of it, be confident in who that was. If I could change one thing, I would say that, like I have said, Sacred Heart offered a lot of opportunities for being such a small school, but there were limitations to that just because of resources and size. It's inevitable. And I think going to university and hearing kind of some of the other courses that students got to take to kind of discover maybe a bit of where they wanted to go after university was something that we didn't necessarily have just because our classes were, the typical basic, math, chem, bio, English, history. And there wasn't anything like law or business or political science, where other larger schools maybe had a little bit more bandwidth and resources to offer some courses that were a little more specialized, where students got to take a sneak peek into what that might be like before they head to university. So I think that would have been something, if they were able to, would be to offer a bit more diversity in those courses, and maybe just in grade 12, in some, even if it was one course that had a bunch of different units that were some sort of other path. I think that would be really neat. Yeah, I think as a student, you never see anything as perfect, even now. Like whatever you're in, when you're in the moment, you don't necessarily appreciate it for all that it is, and especially that being really sh- different, strange time of life when you're trying to figure everything out. Now being away from the school, and I actually got to go present to Sacred Heart a week ago and talk to the students, and it was really neat to see the students and who they are now. Because when I was at the school, they were in grade 7, and were asking such intelligent questions and really comprehensive questions that you don't always see from students. And I think from the outside perspective, Sacred Heart really prepares you to take that next step after high school. Although when you're there, you're stressed because you're taking so many exams, and we have full year courses, so you have more exams at a time. Once I got to university, I realized I was so over prepared that I wasn't stressed for my very first exam period. I only had to write like 3 exams or 5 exams, and that was a breeze compared to Sacred Heart. I knew how to study, I knew how to take notes. Those are things that not every student had going into university that I really appreciated, as well as just appreciating the fact, like education as a whole in itself. Um, I think Sacred Heart really taught me the value of learning and learning differently, and there's different ways to learn. And that all coming together really helped me enjoy my time at university, um, as well as the small class size thing I really did like when I was at school. But sometimes when you're in a small community, it can feel overwhelming because everybody knows you, everyone knows what's going on in your life. There's no escape really. And I remember picking a university thinking, I want to go to a university where I can escape and no one knows who I am. And then I didn't end up doing that. I went to a small university, but the university I went to is an affiliate of a larger university. And I remember walking around campus one day and I didn't see one person I knew. And I didn't say hi to anybody because I didn't know anybody and nobody knew me. And at that point, I realized that even at the time that it was overwhelming, that everyone knew who you were, there was such comfort in that. And it's so nice. It's something that you don't necessarily realize until you're not in a situation where you're kind of feel more alone, that that's something you really appreciate. It's kind of like when you're with your family all the time and you're like, I need a break. And then you want to go home at the end of the day. And I think Sacred Heart is kind of like that. It's kind of like going back, going home, and being an alumni, and the teacher's still there knowing who I am, and the guidance counselor still checking in to see how I'm doing. That's something that now that I've left is something I really hope students appreciate. So, three biggest reasons I recommend the school is because that it isn't a one size fits all school, that the school really does value unique perspectives and diverse learning styles, and they really will offer that support for you. No matter who you are, you're going to find a place at Sacred Heart and they're going to help you make that experience successful. I think the academic level, the education that you actually receive while being at Sacred Heart is really, really great. It's not the same everywhere. And I think that going into university, if that's your goal, no matter what your goal is after you graduate, that you really have a good foundation of education. And I still draw on my high school experience, even in university when I was studying for things. I remembered what I learned, and that base level education that I got really helped me. And then I think the variety of extracurricular activities that you can do at the school is a really great opportunity for students to try new things. Often, at bigger schools, perhaps you don't have the same opportunity to participate in sports or arts or sciences because there's so much competition to get involved in those things. But I was on the grade 12 soccer team, and I'm not a very good soccer player, but there was that opportunity because we didn't have as many students, or I probably wouldn't have taken AP Chem all the way through high school because that wasn't something I thought I had a strength in. But I took that risk because I knew I would have the support, and it ended up being something I was really interested in. Or in the arts at Sacred Heart, there's not like, the jocks and the arts kids and the science kids. I was in the musical with the guys who were, the captain of the basketball team, or you were on a sports team with the kids that you did the musical with. So I think that all of that, the opportunity to get involved in anything, things that you wouldn't usually do because of the small school, is also a really big benefit. I would say families are on the fence about it. I would admit that I was too. When my sister went to the school, as I mentioned, but I wasn't sure that that was the right fit for me. In my head, I had this like vision of TV high school, and I didn't think that private school was that. I thought that was public school. And I think it was just realizing all of the really great opportunities that there were. And no matter what, even if you do have reservations, once you get there, the experience is going to be what you make of it. And you really have an opportunity to make your experience individual and your own. So I think if you are on the fence about it, I think you just have to dive in and know that you can alter your experience. What you see on paper, what you see in a brochure, what you see on the website isn't necessarily the exact experience your student's going to have, because they're going to be different from somebody else, but they're going to have the opportunity to make their experience at Sacred Heart individual. They're going to have their opportunity to make it their own. And I think as important as the academics and the extracurriculars are, I think Sacred Heart really helps you grow as a person. And I think that's maybe not something that's always marketed, because we always think of school as school and sports and extracurricular. But I think during your time in junior high and high school, that's a really crucial time to grow as a person. And I think Sacred Heart really does that. So I would push you to say yes and just dive in and make it what you can. So I entered Sacred Heart at grade 10, so I can speak from that perspective, although I would think it would be similar if you're entering in grade 7 or 8 or 9 as well. Um, my biggest piece of advice is that school doesn't happen just between 8:45 in the morning and 3:30 p.m. There's a lot that happens between 8 a.m. and 8:45 and 3:30 and 5 o'clock. Um, so I encourage students to really try to get involved, even if it's just one thing, even if it's just showing up early and hanging out with friends and getting to know students in different grades, talking to your teachers, talking to your dean of students, whoever it is. That a lot of your learning in high school is going to happen outside of the classroom. And I would encourage you to take advantage of all those opportunities that Sacred Heart offers. And I would also say to not worry to make a fool of yourself or risk something, challenge yourself, try out for a sports team, for a sport you've never played, get help if you need it. If you're struggling in a course, there's no shame in going to talk to a teacher for extra help. That's what they're there for, and they really want to help you. So remember that it's not just the 9 to 3 part of the day, it's everything else that comes with the high school experience, and it's there. You just have to take that risk, and you just have to sign up, and you just have to do it. If you're thinking about choosing Sacred Heart, that it would be a really great choice. I think that what I gained from my high school experience was really unique. And looking back on my time, my 3 years there, it really helped me get to where I am. It really helped me excel at university. I have lifelong friends from the school. I have really vivid memories that I will always cherish. And I think, like I've said, high school is so much more than just showing up and going to class and writing a test and going home. It's meeting people, it's making memories, it's traditions, it's extracurriculars, and it's making connections with people that you'll be connected to for the rest of your life. You'll become a part of this larger global network that is really unique to a high school in a small city like Halifax. So I would encourage you, if that is the high school experience that you're looking for, something more than just the academics, even though the academics are really strong, I would say that Sacred Heart would be a good fit for you.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.